Mm.
It's so spicy.
It's so spicy. Why is it spicy? I love my coffee tasting like dirt.
Cayenne pepper in there for flavor. All right.
I hate to be that guy, but even as I go in my coffee journey to like Nespresso, pour over, really good espresso pulls, I really appreciate like Keurig and
Dirt.
dirt coffee, because like to me it tastes like when you're at the office and you go and it's the afternoon and the coffee's cold and it's one of those 80s type coffee boilers and you just pour a little bit. Sometimes those cups get you the most zooted.
Well, yeah, because all the caffeine is sitting there just to brew it.
So it just tastes like productivity. You know, it's just part of the lore of working and coffee.
Yeah.
And it has its place in the coffee ecosystem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just terrible coffee will get you wired. You'll
Yeah.
go from 0 to 5,000 very fast.
Very fast. And then there are just some that will never have room. Like to me, the espresso from the big company that happened to be founded in the Northwest. It's just their espresso tastes like rubber. It's so bad. And I talked to somebody, and but I order it anyway because I'm stupid. And so then I came back to get my order, and it was sitting there for a second on the counter, and the barista was like, "Let me know if the shot went out or something like that." I'm like, "What? What do you mean went out?" She's like, "If it's been sitting, it like loses its flavor." or something." and I was in my mind, I'm like, "It's already lost its flavor, girl." So I drank it, and I'm like, "Nope, it still tastes like rubber." You're good.
My favorite thing is when we're getting ready for the half marathon, and we go and you get your little espresso shot. We're on the way up to the mountain, and you tried it. And you were completely disgusted. You're like, "This is burnt beyond belief."
Kept drinking it though.
Kept drinking it though. And then guess
Yeah.
what? We're back there tomorrow for the next training day.
Yep. I don't know why. I just they have my heart because I'm from Seattle,
Oh,
and so I always want to give them.
definitely don't have your taste buds.
No, I want to give them the benefit of the doubt every time. And I mean, other than that, they're like a model company. Actually, let's edit that out because there's some debate. But I like them. I really like them, especially what they're doing with trying to make every one of their franchises blend into the local environment.
Local aesthetic.
Well, some of them.
They do
Yeah.
have some really beautiful stores in China.
Yeah.
Like some of the reserve ones. Oh my gosh,
Oh.
the one in Taiyuan was reserve.
Yeah.
It was like really nice, and the reserves have really good coffee.
Have you seen the Shanghai one? The huge one?
No.
There's one in like the middle of one of the most popular neighborhoods in Shanghai. Biggest reserve you've ever seen. 2 stories, huge roastery operation. Like,
So cool.
oh my God. Nothing to do with simple.
Nothing too simple, but it's fun stories.
Fun stories.
Part of our past,
Yeah.
and hopefully more of our future.
More of our future, God willing.
Well, we travel the world to different coffee shops.
I mean, just while we're on the topic of coffee, one of the coolest experiences ever was in China when like you brought me to that apartment coffee school.
Yeah.
That's so fun. Like they just have businesses in apartments in China.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just like, you know, you go up into this nondescript Soviet era looking building,
Mm-hmm.
and then you go into a nondescript hallway, and then you open a door, and it's just this wonderland coffee emporium with like super busy.
Every brewing method known to man.
Even the weird stuff that, you know, like the weird
Turkish coffee.
Yeah, I mean, there's Turkish coffee, but also the glassware looks like something out of a Scooby-Doo Mad Science Lab.
It's true.
And there's students running around everywhere. They're doing like super empirical coffee testing.
Classroom, a little mini roastery. So, a little background. One of my buddies, he roasts all the beans for Taiyuan. Or not all the beans, but a majority of the beans for Taiyuan in the city I lived in. And he has like this little training studio, where he brings in people who want to open coffee shops, and he trains them in all these different methods, or he's trying different beans out, or he's trying a new brewing method. So they go and they just have all these trials of everything. That was cool. That was special.
Yeah, that's really fun. Man, imagine they get like, imagine their hands.
So much coffee
Every day.
I was doing it when we were trying it.
Yeah, I don't know how they do that. Like I love getting super buzzed,
But there's a whole new buzz level buzzed.
there you can shoot through the roof, and then you get to a point where you're like, all right, too much.
Yeah. Remember we were smelling all the raw beans from all over the different world? From all over the different world. All over the world.
Yeah,
Those were so cool.
that was
And
amazing.
they're white.
Yeah, they taste like, or they smell like caramel and chocolate. Like they straight up. Sometimes you take a coffee and they're like, "Can you taste the caramel notes?" And you just, it's like, no, it tastes like coffee. But legit, those beans smell like everything but coffee.
Candy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty cool.
That was a very cool experience. That was one of my favorite experiences. But it's cool. Just that goes to show you where you integrate into a culture, and you get to just show up in this, and you get really cool experiences beyond cool experiences.
Yeah.
I mean, what Joe at the coffee car also taught me how to pull espresso for my first time,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm out there making people espresso, making my friends espresso, making you espresso, like just having fun.
Man, there's nothing like a good pulled espresso.
Yeah.
It's like, it's so good. It's so good.
It was culture, fun.
Culture. So, what we want to talk about in this episode of Founders Files,
It's kind of the same thing
similar thing.
as far as like international relations, working with people from abroad, building relationships.
So, in this episode of Founders Files, we want to talk about what it's like to work with international, or what some call outsourced, labor.
Mm-hmm.
And specifically, we will want to focus on, again, our experience.
Yep.
And what the process of finding ultimately who we're working with now was like. So, where did we start? Say we had our Figma prototype, start from there.
Yep. So we had our Figma prototype, and we're like, what do we do next? How do we make this visual representation real? Figma at that time, you can't just plug it in and hope it works beyond the prototype function. So we needed to find somebody who could do it, and thus began our search of developers. That we had no idea. We thought like it was gonna be easy. You find one guy and he does everything. No, I think that's before we even knew you needed a front end and a back end developer.
Yeah.
You just like, what do you mean you don't do everything? You only do one part?
So one thing that we started with is we knew that we didn't know anything. And so we're like, we need a non-interested third party to tell us what we should be looking for. And we went about that by two means. First, and I'll intro them and you can kind of describe what the details were. First was a friend we knew in person, who is a CTO of a company down in San Diego involved in payments.
Yep.
And then another is we just went on one of these contracting sites. I think we went on Fiverr, and we just searched like a mobile technology consultant.
Yep.
And so we found somebody who was offering consultancy, basically saying like, hey, this is our idea. Tell us what's required. So these were the two ways we were going to go about figuring out like, what should we be looking for? So starting with the person that we knew, like, how did we have that conversation?
Yeah, so the person we knew, we basically went up and were like, hey, we have this idea. Where do we go from here? This is what we kind of want it to look like. This is the functionality we want it to have. What's next? And he kind of broke it down for us, saying, all right, this is are things you're going to need. I guess the first one was like an intro conversation, gentle intro conversation. And found out what he did, locally, globally, XYZ. But yeah, we basically just talked about what we want to do, how we want to implement it, what does that look like. And he gave us a lot of good ideas, plus what he thinks should be added onto it, which was really cool because that was like adding his insight. And what was cool was like he was already successful in the tech world. So he didn't sit there and shoot down our idea. He told us how we could build on it. So that was stuff for us to ponder.
Yep.
And then the consultant, he just was like, you need to do this, and this. And we're like,
Yeah, that was overwhelming.
okay.
It was we came into him wanting to know the same thing from both, and we got two separate helpful things.
Yep.
The first one, he's like, "Oh, good idea. Have you thought about this? Like you said." And that's when, I mean, we've talked about this before. It's important to know what your goals are, so you can not get totally derailed by someone you look up to suggesting something else.
Correct.
Because it's like, we knew that we didn't know anything about tech, but we also knew what we wanted to get out of it. And we knew that we wanted to add his suggestions maybe later, but we also didn't want to totally change the scope of our project.
Yeah.
So that was helpful. And what information we got about what we actually needed to build in the short term was kind of helpful. And then from the IT guy consultation, yeah, you're right. Super overwhelming. Used a lot of words we didn't know, but it was all super helpful stuff. We learned the difference between an Android
launcher and a ROM.
Yeah, Android launcher and an Android ROM, which for everyone listening, the launcher is basically like an app. If you're looking at your phone, how you literally interact with your phone, like this is where the apps are.
It's the skin.
It's the skin. That's the launcher.
Yeah.
And then the ROM is like, think about the entire operating system.
Correct. From the bottom up.
So like iOS, Android, these aren't ROMs per se, but these are operating systems. And so like, say for example, think about when you were jailbreaking your iPhone. You're not really loading a different operating system, but you could, I mean, see, this is still, it goes so far. I don't even know if it's still confusing. I don't know if even when you jailbreak your iPhone, if that's could even be considered a ROM. Probably not, because you could jailbreak your iPhone.
Launcher.
That might be the launcher. Yeah, you're right. That would be a launcher. Different way of viewing your phone, different way the apps could work. Because like for a ROM, you need to plug it in to your computer. You need to mostly open the command line and give like technical jargon to your computer to flash this new operating system. So that was new information to us. And then we figured out, all right, okay, so in terms of now how do we want to build, we could then set a priority. And so like, how did we think about our roadmap in terms of how we wanted to build? And then how did that define how we wanted to address technical construction?
It was, from what we understood, and we did more research simultaneously, it's like, well, okay, what's next? It's like you talk about, one foot in front of the other. What's our next step? Okay, so we need to find somebody who's a back-end developer to do this and that. Cool. Launcher developer. All right. Now what? This type of launcher developer. And we just kind of shimmied around one step at a time for a while, trying to, learn what we need to do next.
Yeah.
Because we had no idea.
Yeah.
We had no idea.
Yeah.
We're like, okay, we were told we're supposed to do this. Then we look into it a little bit, like, that sounds right. And then we go for it and we hire a developer. And then a lot of it was trial and error. We went through a couple developers where didn't really seem to work out, didn't get much done. And then we hit one developer.
Yeah. The trade-off is, if you don't know exactly what you're going off of, the process you're going to be using to try to figure out what you need to do if you're building in real time is by nature going to be inefficient. You're going to be experimenting with priorities and labor.
Yeah.
So like you said, for example, we had an idea of how we wanted to build. We needed a back end, we needed a front end. We decided to start with the front, because if we started with the front, anybody could download it on any Android device. Whereas if we started with the ROM, that would be a lot harder, because you have to build a ROM for each individual device.
Yep.
So then we went to our first developer and we're like, hey, this is what we want. And we just typed out just like a message in the chat box. And then he delivered to us. He's like, here's the price. He delivered. The quality of the delivery was, on a scale of 1 to 10, a certain number. And we're like, okay, based on this isn't what we asked for. This isn't what we asked for. Maybe we could make this better. But that wasn't really on him either, because we didn't know that the best way to work with the developer is to act as if they are like a robot that responds and builds exactly to your specifications. And that's their job. And there's nothing like, a developer's job is not to interpret your bad instructions.
No, They will not do anything but, oh, maybe I think I should do this. No.
No.
They do it word for word, line for line. If you give them a color code, they will use that color code.
Yeah. So, and that's not on them.
No.
Product design and specification is something that we learned to do. So on the second iteration with this guy, we finally learned that there's this thing that we need called a product specification document. At least that's what we're using. That's what we call it, and that's our method right now, which is to say, at the very beginning of the document, this is the goal of the project. This is the scope of the work. High level, this is what we want out of it. And then we literally, with images and videos, if possible, of the prototypes of each tool that we want them to build, this is what this function is, and this is what it looks like. This is what this function is, and this is what it looks like. And here's all the details that we can think of that will help you. And then, and this is where technical writing is an art, you have to make it concise and easy to read.
Yep.
Because if it's just like, oh, and this, oh, and by the way, and this, it's, you might as well just not write the document because it's so confusing.
Yeah, and you're working with people who English is probably not their first language.
Right.
And you really need to be careful and tread the waters of, okay, is this language that they're going to understand? Maybe. I hope so. Like, you can't be too vague, but you can't be... I don't know. It was a fine line with nailing down the word choice.
Yeah.
And I think our number one benefit is we had that prototype built out exactly how we wanted it.
Mm-hmm.
And we would reference it in the PSD, say, here, screenshot 1, A15, profile picture. But they were so literal. Like, I remember it was like a custom. Oh, we sent him a screenshot, an example of what we want the profile to look like, right? With the pre-entered names, just to give an example of what's going to go in there.
Yeah.
And then on the next version he sent us, it had all those names and information built in there. Like, cool.
Like our example phone number.
Yeah, it was like we gotta put our phone number, and we couldn't change anything.
No.
So it was like that's what we mean by they're just super literal. Which, like you said, it's on us, but it's just funny that they will take it to the T.
Yep.
That kind of specific.
And that's another thing. Like after we figured out we needed the spec document, then we're like and everything is iterative again. So we got better at spec documents over time. But that first time, we gave them what we had. And then we figured out the rule is to give them as much information as possible. Because the first time, the spec document was a little bit better, but not perfect.
Yeah.
Next time, we gave them a spec document with links to our prototypes, links to videos. And then we say, hey, take a look at the spec document. Please ask every and all question you have.
Yeah.
And let's talk about it in the chat. And then, like you talked about with the language and cultural issues, not issues, but those barriers. Yeah. This is something that we also need to be mindful in chat about. So even not just on the spec document, but when we're chatting to them about clarifying these things, we need it to be very clear, if not more clear. Because if they're asking a question to us on chat, that means, oh, this thing is confusing to them. Let me get clarification. So you need to be even more specific and more clear if you're clarifying something on your spec doc through a chat.
Yeah. Do you think, I kind of have my own thoughts on this, but do you think that our international experience, living in a different culture, integrating in a different culture, helped with the way we interact with working from people from abroad?
I think it comes with empathy because like you realize that it's just like not some foreign, out of sight, out of mind agent in some far off place that you are just frustrated because they don't like work exactly how you're used to in your own cultural context. But it's like, look, if you are wading into the international job market, you have to be willing to empathize with and tolerate different ways of working, different ways of communicating.
Small nuances.
Yeah, and be able to roll with the punches.
Yep.
That helped it, yeah.
Yeah, because it's always frustrating for me to see people who try and work on these job sites and find people from abroad, and they get frustrated. Oh, they're not doing this, they're not doing that. I'm like, have you ever thought it's because they are from a different culture?
Yeah.
Right? no, but that shouldn't matter to their. It's like, it does.
Yeah.
It does.
It's weird too that there's a difference between finding somebody for the long term and doing one-off projects. But it seems like very often, if you don't have like that perspective that this is a global workforce, sometimes people feel it's okay to treat them as robots. But no, like
They're people too.
yeah, they're people too. Treat them as you would want to be treated. Like, be kind. Say, how are you doing? Like, one thing that like we make it a practice of is like, if they like small talk and they like chatting, just like chatting.
Dude, you're my favorite at this. This is
That's
so funny. You're sending pictures of cats to our developers.
send pictures of cats. They send pictures of their pets. We talk about video games. Like we're friends. We're legitimately friends as well. Which is like, it's so important to build the relationship. Yeah. Like, and this goes into if you're not looking for just a temporary project and you're fishing for some long-term support. There's a different way you need to go about things. So like one way that we did is you mentioned before, ran through a couple of developers. And what that method is you work with someone until you're like, you figure out the standard of work and you figure out the working relationship. Yeah. It's like, is their standard something that I'm willing to work with relative to like
cost
relationship, relative to how do we communicate, and if it's a fit, awesome, keep working. Yeah. And if it's not a fit, it's like, it's no hard feelings. It's contract work to begin with anyway. Yeah. So then you fish and fish and fish. So kind of our method is you can either go and search people's resumes individually. So you search like Android developer, and then you go look at the resumes. Or you put out a job request and you say, we need an Android developer for this specific thing. And you can even attach your product spec to that listing. And then you field all the inquiries and you look. And this is a pro tip, the most promising applicants are the ones who ask you questions and give you their perspective as to how it will best be done. Yeah. The most average and the most shot in the dark are the ones who's like, here's my experience. I think I can get your project done. Here's a history of my projects. Because it's like typically copy and paste. But those people who like ask questions specific to your project, here's how they want to do it. Here's how they think they could help. They're already thinking about it. And like the two people we're working with now, that's how they both started. Yep. They responded and they asked questions.
They're curious.
Yeah.
And it's helpful because they both align with our values and what we're trying to do, and they see the value. It's cool because for the majority of the developers we have worked with, they have all gotten what we're doing and like understood the mission and vision. So they weren't just workers. They saw the value that we're trying to bring through this, and then a lot of them are like, "This is cool. I would use this." Da 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 da. So it's cool to see that. Mm-hmm. But on the flip side, you're also gonna have like some of the downsides of online work is you're gonna get people like with the guy who he said was from Canada, and he said his English level was like expert or fluent or something, and this guy is just like struggling, and it's like we tried to work with him, and we tried to ask him like, all right, if this happens, how are you going to handle it? Because this is like questions we've asked a couple different developers, so we kind of had a rough idea of the answers, and like he was giving us ChatGPT responses
literally on a phone call. It's like we're like, okay, maybe this guy's English is not as good as he says. Yeah. It's fine. We can tolerate a certain amount of fluffing of the resume. Yeah. And so we typed the question to him, and then we literally heard him like, like he basically copied our question into ChatGPT, and he
waited a second. Every single time he would wait a second.
Yeah. And it's like, man, at that point, you're probably really looking for work, but like, dude, just do something more your speed. Work up to, I don't know. Like, I mean, we can't empathize with the other side of this, but from our perspective, that's not a way to develop a good working relationship with a buyer or a seller.
And he had other people whispering in his ear.
Yeah, he did. That was weird.
Yeah. So it's like we've been very lucky by the developers that we have, but at the same time, there is a negative
Yeah.
side of the quality
Yeah.
part
So
of things.
I suppose probably then the next step is you look for developers that you want, or you wait for people to apply, and then say, for example, you get a list of 8
Mhm.
in the process of 3 days. Then what you do is you go through your vetting process. So you ask them questions, ask them details, and then you see what do they like to work with, what is their aptitude, and then you know you're gonna have varying degrees of success. You'll shortlist some people, get rid of some people right away, and with the people you've shortlisted, you can ask more specific questions before you give them work.
Yeah.
And then, man, there are some people you're really going to want to work with, but they just don't pass the sniff test. And it's your call if you want to take a bet on the people. But like typically what we do is like, I think us trusting our gut has gotten us pretty far.
Yeah.
And so if something just doesn't fit right, even if on paper you're like, man, this seems right on paper, but just something about it is off, just move on. There's somebody else that can do that.
There's no sunk cost yet.
Yeah, there's no sunk cost.
And it's like, all right, do you take the risk then, pour a bunch of money into it, and potentially lose a bunch of money? But more than the money, it's the time.
The time.
Right?
Yeah.
Because if we had this one time with one of our earlier developers, we had to remind him multiple times to release stuff. And he was like repeatedly late. And this is when we were like right at our start. So we had a lot of deadlines that we were trying to meet, trying to develop for. And he was just constantly late. And it's like, that's hard.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's something that's not really, you can't really plan for.
No.
What was the comment was he promises a horse but delivers a donkey.
Yeah, that guy.
And that was so true for him. And that's just our lack of due diligence. But goes to show like you can really have the best and worst of both worlds.
Yeah.
On these vetting sites, on or job finding sites.
But also don't be discouraged when you get a delivery that is different than what you want.
Yeah.
Because typically any progress is good progress.
Yeah. And they want to work with you. Like if you are landing a good developer, they'll want to do updates. They want to know how they can make it better because their reputation's on the line just like yours. Yeah. They want to build their product so they can show it off, so they can get bigger clients, charge more money, X, Y, Z, and another. It's a pride thing. What
we found too is there's different standards of work on different sites.
Yeah.
And it's an expectation. So like on Fiverr, if you want a quick prototype or you want a quick design, Fiverr's excellent. And then if you want just like a higher consistent standard, at least what we found in our line of work is that Upwork works.
Yep.
Like, so we did the same process on both sites, and both developers we've worked with now, we found on Fiverr, both of them have gone beyond the
Fiverr,
Upwork. Oh yeah. Both Upwork and people that we're working with now have gone beyond what we would consider contractors.
Oh, 100%.
To like, it would be nice to find a way to bring them on.
Yep.
With time, exactly. So, we can only work with the resources that we have now, which, with time, but they have evolved into like good partners.
Yeah.
And
they communicate well. They know what we're trying to do.
Yep.
Mission value. They agree with it. They're willing to keep submitting revisions, constant communication, and they deliver it quickly.
Quickly, very quickly. Quickly than maybe we're even ready for.
Yeah.
But one of them is even pushing our skills. He's like, hey, do you have we really need to do tickets on Jira. Hey, do we have this specific integration into GitHub?
Yeah.
Hey, this. Hey, this standard is not something that we should be expecting with this kind of work. And so then we're in a situation where we're like, oh, sorry about that. We need to give you what we need. We need to be better on our end.
Yeah.
So and that's what we found with the partnership. That's why it's turned into a partnership. It's because it's not just like we ask, they give.
Yeah.
It's like, hey,
They're
we're in
asking
this
stuff
together.
from us, which
Yeah.
is cool because that one makes them feel integrated and wanted and listened to and valued.
Yeah.
And it shows that they are also an integral part of the team
Yep.
because now no longer it's gone beyond just contractual work. We're on this, Jira page with all these with these developers
Yeah.
working together. They see each other's achievements in X, Y, Z, and another.
Mhm.
So it's cool to have them in as a team.
Yeah.
So like you said, once we can find a way to get them on full time, we're going for it.
Yeah.
Why? Because one, they are of tremendous value to us, and two, we want them. They're putting way more
Yeah.
than what we can give them right now.
And talk about values alignment. Like you said, they're such good people. Like, to me, of course, you want to keep a professional relationship, but like, I consider them friends. Like,
Yeah.
more than just like people we're doing work for. Like, I would count them a friend.
Yeah.
Too, which is a cool place to get to. And
It
I
is
feel
cool.
like, yeah, if you do the contracting thing well enough, that's kind of where you want to get to.
Yeah.
You don't want to be finding new people to do work for you
That's
forever.
it, right. You want somebody who understands your organization, how things are run on the back end, how things are looking on the front end. You don't want to re-explain that every single time to
No.
a new contractor,
No,
right?
no.
There's a reason why people partner with the same, I don't know, editorial company or
Yeah.
whatever. It's because they want that consistency. You don't need to go into it re-explaining everything all over again.
To be honest, it seems like a better way to hire in general.
Yeah.
Like, you do an interview and you do a couple technical interviews and you have like a probation period that usually they will pass.
Mm-hmm.
Or you're like, hey, I'm going to pay you to do work. And if it's a fit, we continue doing work until, you hit that like golden, or you hit some sort of line that you cross where you're like, all right, you're in, you're on.
Yeah. And there's a couple different ways you can go about it, because we have a buddy of ours. He hired like 3 or 4 different developers. He hired 3 or 4 different developers to do the same task, paid them all the same, and then from that, he chose the best one or whatever one, produced the best product or whatever, and took them and brought them on full time or brought them on beyond just that initial vetting period.
Mm-hmm.
So there is different ways to do it. We have been extremely lucky.
Extremely lucky.
And I mean, like we said, we're talking from our experience.
Yeah.
And I think it's valuable that we tell people both sides, because I think a lot of people just jump to conclusions one way or the other. And unfortunately, there is another flip side of the coin.
Yeah. You just got to know what you're getting into. Like, it seems like time is of the essence with construction in any industry, or building. So it's like, maybe a best practice is like, be quick on your diligence, rely on your gut heavily as well. It depends on your your tolerance for risk, but be quick to hire if you think a person would be a good bet, and also be quick to part ways, and don't hold any.
Grudges.
If it's good work, awesome, good work, you part ways. If it's bad work, don't be like, oh, this guy sucks, and give him a bad review.
Yeah.
Like, what goes around comes around. Be kind to everyone.
And there's some times where we probably could have given him a much worse review than we did, but we tried to give, like you said, the people the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
So,
but if it's not a fit, just be quick to move on.
Yeah.
That's it.
Time is money.
Yeah.
You got to move on. So it's like there's no reason to dwell, but there's always on the same side. It's like you do need to push stuff quickly and get moving quickly, and that will save you time if you stay with the same developers.
Yep.
Because that onboarding and offboarding process is still going to take time.
Yeah.
And searching is going to be some of the longest time. It's like one, you get pulled away from what you need to do to find help of something that you could have just kept the same person for.
Yeah. Honestly, like, before we started this, I always heard like, oh, what's an employee's like full value? It also, like, hiring and firing, it's part of an employee's full value, and there's a huge opportunity cost, and it's like an employee costs $100,000 to hire, and I'm like, that doesn't make sense. Yeah. But then going after this, it's like learning from this, I'm like, oh,
you see.
Yeah, you see why hiring is so important.
And what I like about contract work beyond an employee's. An employee is like, I'm getting paid regardless,
Yeah.
whether I get full effort or no effort. These guys, if they don't put in their full effort, we might be looking for somebody else, right? So then they'll be out of work. So they are working their own small business per se, trying to keep that face up while we're trying to do the same. So it's mutually beneficial if both companies, the contractee and the contractor, are working together simultaneously to work for one goal.
Yeah, that's true. So I think that's about the extent of our knowledge so far on contract work specifically. We'll probably know more about recruiting in different ways very soon here. We'll have an update, but
and the same with like outsourcing work. You could also say the same for if there's a way to integrate over build brand new, try and integrate. Because
build versus buy,
because it's going to save you time in the short run to buy. Yes, it's more cost effective. It's also where networking comes in. You can just ask, right? Build relationships, get on trial periods, do all this, see if it's something that fits and works. And then in the long term, build.
You've basically, if you buy versus build or generate partnerships, it's kind of like contracting your labor out, but the labor's done already.
It's done already.
Yeah.
It's already there.
Yeah.
And I think that's a cool thing with technology is being able to find that middle ground of buying versus building. Because why? You don't need to build everything. Yeah, it would be nice to build everything and you have control, but when time is of the essence, integrate.
Yep. This is a topic for a different show.
It is.
The magic of the API. Oh my goodness.
Wow.
APIs are the best. But yeah, that's contract work in a nutshell.
Yep. Thank you for listening.
See you next time.
Bye.
Peace.